As China moved into the 1980s, its leadership recognized that their military aviation was lagging behind and its air force was in dire need of modernization. Several programs were started to help boost the domestic aviation industry, including a project to develop a new fighter aircraft that would be competitive against foreign rivals when it finally entered service. Several designs were considered, and in 1984, the proposal from the Chengdu Aircraft Design Institute was selected, as it seemed to be the most forward-thinking at the time. Formal development work started in early 1985, before the official funding was even approved, with the program taking far longer than originally expected. The new plane would require not only the domestic development of a significant amount of new technology, but also the manufacturing and logistical infrastructure to actually produce the thing beyond handmade prototypes. The jet was now designated as J-10 and ended up being the first Chinese aviation project to incorporate early CAD tools and digital modeling in its design process, another element that caused delays, but improved the quality of the final aircraft. The first prototype finally flew in 1998, but the test program suffered more setbacks due to engine issues and iterative design changes in its fly-by-wire control system. Eventually, all of the problems were resolved, and the jet officially entered low-rate service in late 2003 after spending almost 20 years under development. Since then, the J-10 has been upgraded and produced in several newer variants, and it's expected to continue in service with China and Pakistan for at least several decades. One last thing I want to mention is that there are persistent rumors on the internet that the J-10 was developed from the abandoned Israeli Lavi fighter program. There is no hard evidence to back up that claim, beyond second and third-hand accounts of what somebody claims they heard from somebody who claims they overheard a conversation. Maybe it did use technology from the Lavi, but if it did, there isn't any real proof, and until there is, it's just a rumor. What we get in War Thunder is the J-10A, a jet fighter in rank 8 of the Chinese tech tree at battle rating 13.7 for air battles and 12.3 for ground. The jet gets a ballistics computer for its air-to-ground weapons, an EEGS for its cannon, and a modern directional-based radar warning receiver with E through J-band tracking. The radar set is the Type 1473. This gets multiple pulse Doppler modes, track wall scan, helmet targeting, and multiple ACM frames. Its range is listed at 70 kilometers, but it usually only detects targets much closer than that, which I'll discuss later. The stat card for this radar doesn't show any data link channels, but I confirmed in TACView that it does support at least one data link. The loadouts include up to 8 air-to-air missiles, various dumb bombs, rocket pods, guided bombs, along with a targeting pod, in addition to a pair of drop tanks that take the place of your inbound pair of missiles. Speaking of which, the dogfight missiles you get are the PL-5 E2 and the PL-8. This version of the PL-5 has infrared countermeasures, 30 Gs of pull, and all-aspect infrared tracking. The PL-8 pulls harder and can occasionally do some good high off-boresight attacks, but no IRCCM. So it's a choice between more reliable infrared shots or more agile infrared shots. The radar missile is the PL-12, an active radar homing weapon with data link and inertial guidance. They're roughly comparable to the other active radar missiles at the top tier, with fairly average all-around performance. There are two choices for laser-guided bombs, but both of them are fairly small, and neither has a significant blast radius. The smaller GB250 supports inertial tracking though, which isn't nothing. The new weapons the J-10 gets are two satellite GLONASS-guided glide bombs, the PL-6-250 and the LS-6-500, both of which have a set of folding wings that will deploy out and allow the bomb to maneuver well off the direction they're dropped and provide very accurate strikes. Similar to the LGBs though, both of these bombs are individually fairly small. Now, the flight performance of the J-10A is outstanding in most respects and fully competitive with other top-tier single-engine fighters. It's got very strong acceleration along with good rate of climb and a decent top speed. Being a Canard Delta, the J-10 makes some notable trade-offs that are going to impact how you fly it against different types of opponents. The energy retention at medium speeds is usually pretty bad, but the flip side of that is how it can pull insane high AOA snap turns and change its direction incredibly quickly at anything below Mach 1. Really, any opponent except for a Gripen is going to have a hard time in a one-on-one dogfight against the J-10, and even the Gripen is basically just a fair fight. Now, against lighter opponents like F-16s, you can leverage your insane AOA and horizontal maneuvers to get your nose around on them quickly, and heavier opponents like F-15s and flankers are usually even easier since you can take them vertical without much trouble. The clip you're watching now was a close-up engagement with the Mirage 4000, and you can see that I kept the fight as vertical as I could, letting him energy trap himself several times, and using the J-10's high AOA and strong engine power to completely dominate the engagement, even though the Mirage also has pretty solid horizontal AOA performance itself. One catch though is going to be the drop tanks. If you want to take any extra fuel, you have to give up a pair of missiles, which isn't great. And if you carry a full weapon load, the low quantity of fuel can limit your tactics on larger maps. So definitely something to consider when you're constructing your loadouts. Now, taking the J-10 into air battles honestly took a little time to get used to. The radar can have trouble detecting targets at longer range, like out past 40 kilometers, so long-distance yeet shots with the PO-12s, which are going to be kind of flaky shots to begin with, are going to be even less reliable than normal since the data link might not really be very consistent. For that reason, I really can't recommend doing high-altitude BVR stuff with the J-10, and I didn't have much luck with those kind of sorties. What seemed to work more often were more conventional flights, just going in low, hugging the dirt, and trying to get positioned for a flank attack, progressing into close-up knife fighting. This jet really excels at short-range dogfights and big furballs since, between its excellent agility and helmet-mounted sight, it's fairly easy to get missile shots off under 10 kilometers or so with almost no caveats. The supply of countermeasures is adequate. You won't be able to dump them all over the place like you can with a tornado or something, but it's usually enough. And if you're able to force those close-range engagements, you can be a little bit more conservative with them anyway. When it comes to ground attack, mixed bag here. You can carry enough bombs to take out a base in an air battle, but you have to give up most of your missiles to do it, so I'm generally going to say you should just stick to air combat unless you're still grinding the upgrades. In terms of close air support, at a first glance, the J-10A might seem like a good strike jet, since it's got a targeting pod and some guided weapons. But the overall load of those guided weapons is very low, and the weapons themselves are all very light hitters individually. The LGBs will be the best choice in most situations, but the new satellite-guided glide bombs might find a niche in attacking the Pantsir S-1 or other stationary SPAA targets. They've got great range if you zoom toss them upwards, and you still don't even need to see the target, but you do need a direct impact since they're still really light bombs. Also, they don't track moving targets or anything, so you can really only go after stationary campers. Kind of a niche role, and in general, they're more of a gimmick on this jet. Visually, the J-10 is a badass looking fighter, and we get some really good paint jobs for it. The default gray is really nice, and I'm always a fan of a good airshow skin, so generally speaking, I'm highly satisfied with the visuals on this plane, and even the afterburners look pretty good. Landing is mostly simple and comparable to other top-tier planes. You can drop gear at about 600 kilometers an hour, and it doesn't have landing flaps, but it's still pretty easy to land overall thanks to its good low-speed performance and a responsible throttle. The cockpit of the J-10 gives really good visibility and has multiple MFDs in decent positions. I didn't have any trouble either flying or fighting with this jet in VR, and the only real shortcoming is the lack of a HUD projected on the helmet-mounted display. Past that, great cockpit. To close out on the J-10A. This jet carries a good load of competitive air-to-air missiles. It's got extreme dogfight agility, helmet-mounted targeting, and good engine power. However, its radar isn't great at longer ranges. Taking drop tanks costs you a pair of missiles, and its close air support functionality is only a secondary role at best. The final verdict on the J-10A is that this jet is an outstanding close-in dogfighter and can easily dominate most one-on-one engagements if it's flown well. But in basically every other combat situation, it's only going to be average. As always, thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, check out this other one.